And I think recording started. Fantastic. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for coming along to this workshop. Hopefully it will give you an insight into what on earth a life cycle assessment is. And it is a workshop. It is going to be interactive. Apologies that I'm in the bedroom. My other half, she's a teacher, and she has relegated me to the bedroom while she's teaching in the living room right now. So hopefully you can all hear me. If you want to message in the chat as we go, absolutely fantastic. I'd appreciate if you were to do that. Thanks, Courtney. So, what is a life cycle assessment? I've seen that there's a number of people here that are not just chemistry, some are biology as well, which is maybe even some physicists, but I've seen that we're not solely chemists, so that might be a good place to start. Oh, more people are coming. So, outcomes of this workshop. The title was What on Earth a Life Cycle Assessment, or what on earth is a life cycle assessment, and why you think it's or why it's more important than you think. And there's not going to be any definitive answers except for really what a life cycle assessment is and how we can really use that in lessons and use that within the curriculum to make sure that we're focusing on sustainability when we're teaching across the chemistry curriculum. Most of the chemistry curriculum, as we will explore, allows itself to be to have life cycle assessments built in. So we're going to evaluate the importance of these life cycle assessments within the curriculum and try and explore how we can embed these and therefore sustainability within the whole curriculum of chemistry. Not limited though to chemistry. It might give you a way to use this in your other subjects, your other sciences, other subjects that might be taught that deal with materials. And then I'm going to pose a question a bit later on about how we can be a little bit more sustainable as chemistry teachers. So first of all, what on earth is a life cycle assessment? Now, I've not made this up. This is taken from the internet, and a life cycle assessment or a life cycle analysis, commonly abbreviated to LCA. That's what you'll see a lot in this presentation. I'm not going to read the slide word for word, but basically it's a method for assessing environmental impact associated with every single stage of a particular product or a particular service life. So from extraction and processing, known as cradle, through the whole manufacture, any transport costs and energy associated with transport, distribution, and then the use to then the grave, the recycling and or disposal of materials. So that's what a life cycle assessment is. Now, in the in the most recent curriculum revamp, life cycle assessments were applied or were added to the chemistry curriculum. And we're going to quite answer the question, why on earth would we just stick to one lesson? Why can't this be throughout and change the way we think? So put simply, life cycle assessment, then method of evaluating the impact that something has on the environment. And it really could mean anything. Now, a lot of textbooks that I've been looking through when I've been teaching it as well, they focus on comparing plastic bags with paper bags. And that is the limit that life cycle assessments seem to feature. However, it really could mean anything. And students can gain so many different skills, so many different transferable skills that we'll have a look at. But they are often subjective and can be difficult to place values on some stages of a product's life. So, for example, extraction, it can be subjective of how it's extracted. You can put values on amount of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere. You can put values on the carbon footprint of the distribution, but it is very subjective and it involves a scoring system. You'd score something out of 10 based on its environmental impact for that particular stage. So its extraction, what score out of 10 would you give it based on your assessment? The processing, manufacture, distribution, etc. And then finally, overall, the end of its life, or if it can be recycled, reused. And a subjective analysis still needs to have some form of score. So I'm going to start off. It's a workshop. It's not me just talking at you. Don't worry. I'm going to open some breakout rooms. I'm going to randomly put you in breakout rooms. I just want you to ask, I want you to very quickly discuss some products that might lend themselves in general life. I've given you two to start you off with: paper versus plastic bags. You would analyze the manufacturing, the distribution, well, the extraction of the raw materials to start with of plastic, and then for paper. And then you'd see that one might be a score of 50 out of however many, and one might be a score of 45. Again, that is subjective, but some products really do lend themselves to life cycle assessments more than others. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. And we've got 14 participants. So I'm just going to do 3 breakout rooms, and I will close them in 5 minutes. Well, more, not 5 minutes, maybe 4.
Oh no, I left too early.
It's all right. It's all right.
No. I was making such a valid point, and then
what were you saying?
Oh no, it's not what we're saying now.
Of course it is. Of course it's worth saying.
Oh, right. I feel like I betrayed my group by leaving early. I didn't mean to press the button, it just came up. I was gonna start to suggest a point between electrical energy and nuclear energy. So the actual manufacturing of electrical energy and a nuclear power plant. How when you have a nuclear power plant, you have waste products that are radioactive, and so that end point, that grave sort of assessment, it lasts longer. Sorry guys, I pressed the button too early.
It's okay, it's fine.
Right. Right.
Oh, I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Okay. Okay, so let's hear some. I think we're all back. So breakout room 1, can I just have a
I don't remember which breakout room we were.
Okay, Daniel, your breakout room, please.
Okay, we got a few.
Go on, yeah.
We got fruit and vegetables, like
Okay.
natural foods against processed foods would be quite a good one, I think. We also mentioned about metallic glass or plastic bottles.
Okay.
And another one we had was just at the end there was games. And that, if you think about it, the energy required to get people to work, to develop the game, to program the game, to market the game. And then you think, because it's just, we wanted something that was more not a physical entity or thing, but because it's digital, it still has a carbon footprint to it.
Really like that. So would you, the comparison would probably be to like board games or
Board
something like
games,
that?
yeah, something like that. They something digital, like the carbon footprint of something digital.
Really good. I like that. I like that thought. Thank you very much. Another breakout room.
So we were doing the debate of like disposable nappies versus like the terracloth ones. So the ones you can reuse, obviously the disposable nappies have like a 500-year breakdown. And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
we were thinking of like face masks or current ones. So the disposable ones versus ones people make at home. So reusable ones.
I think I came in at the point of face masks. I was trying not to be current. I didn't want to bring up COVID, but it's a very valid point, face masks. And it would be really great for students to think about that as well at the moment. I guess. Any others from the other breakout room?
We were discussing like the different materials for clothes and stuff. Obviously with fast fashion, that's a big thing at the moment, versus sustainable clothing. And we also talked about masks and straws. You got like the plastic straws versus like bamboo straws, etc.
Fantastic. I came into it might have been your group then, talking about cotton versus polyester and things that you perhaps wouldn't necessarily think about in terms of like clothing. The students are so shocked when you tell them that their polyester shirts come from crude oil. And then is that really better than cotton? And it's about weighing it up. And that's kind of what a life cycle assessment is. It really gets you to think about the actual carbon footprint, the effect on the environment of everything around you. And I like the idea that it's not just something that's physical, it's something that could be digital. So I really like some fantastic ideas. I came up with a couple, mostly because I was thinking linking to the curriculum, paper versus plastics, the different fuels, foods, ceramics is a part of the curriculum, pharmaceuticals, again, other materials like metals, batteries are reusable, rechargeable ones better, and all of the different things to do with the manufacture that goes into different types of batteries, fertilizers, catalysts, all of these things, amongst many others like you've just all talked about. Now, these appear as actual specific parts of the curriculum. They actually have their own topics. So ceramics and composites and metals, plastics, crude oil, fuels, batteries, fertilizers, catalysts. They are all specific parts of the curriculum. Yet, for some reason, a life cycle assessment topic is in most textbooks, 1 page, in most schools taught as 1 lesson, when the idea behind a life cycle assessment and getting students and ourselves to really think about the impact of all the products, the services that we use, and being able to make informed choices, I think that it's a very important thing that is missed or glossed over a few too often. So in schools, they tend to be standalone lessons. They might be linked to reducing, reusing, recycling lessons, but then, like I've just said, they could lack depth, which is a shame. As I was thinking about this workshop, I was really thinking of how much cross-curricular or transferable skills that students could get. And there is an opportunity for intense evaluative and argumentative skills to be developed. They often do get questions in their exams And I'm not just talking about it in terms of exams, but they do get questions where they say, compare this with this, compare this method of metal extraction, compare the pros and cons of quarrying, etc. And I think if they've got these evaluative and argumentative skills embedded through carrying out life cycle assessments on all of the materials that they are studying, then they stand in better stead to answer those questions in more detail, but also moving out of school and in their everyday life to really be conscious about the products and materials and the services that they're using. I think we're in a generation perhaps that we go for the reusable, we go for the biodegradables. We make sure we're a bit more green in our everyday life, but we don't really consciously think about the backstory for everything that we're using in everyday life. And I think this is a real opportunity to really embed into students that to actively and consciously think about what they're using and what they're doing in life. Now, it does require a certain level of knowledge linked to the environment, linked to manufacturing procedures and extraction processes. So sometimes in schools, it's done right at the end of a topic, of their learning of the year 11 curriculum, maybe, because you need lots of knowledge in order to carry out a life cycle assessment. How can you actively carry out a life cycle assessment of a plastic bag if you've not yet done the extraction of crude oil? But that's not to say that you can't do a life cycle assessment within that topic. So again, I'm going to put you into some more random breakout rooms. I want you to think, what knowledge must the students have before conducting these LCAs? What do you think that, and yourselves, what knowledge must you have is probably the knowledge the students must have in order to carry out a life cycle assessment of a particular substance and then comparing it to another. So again, I'm going to put you into some random ones. If you end up in the same ones as last time, just roll with it. And I'll see you in 5 minutes. Cool. I think we're all back now. So a couple of ideas from the different rooms, please. Let's start. Who's going to jump in? Because if I'm not going to say room 1.
I'll go for ours if you want. I don't know what group we were in, but
Great.
So he said for like the initial materials, we'd need to know what materials you needed and where they'd come from, so like how you'd extract them, and then like the manufacturing process, and how you transport it, and then how you'd also dispose of it in the end as well.
Great, yeah. So you've got to have the knowledge of each of those steps. I think another group said a similar thing. Was it Daniel's group when I jumped in on that?
Yeah, we were saying that they wouldn't need to know the exact numbers, but they just need to understand the different steps of a life cycle assessment, and like the manufacturing and disposal. They need to understand what those steps actually involved and what they meant.
Good stuff. And then final breakout room.
We talked about the different usage as well. So we did all the other stuff, but we were saying that, so a paper bag might have, say, a smaller life cycle assessment. It might look better, but if you can only use it once, is it actually better? Or is it better to spend a bit more energy producing the plastic ones that you can use multiple times?
Yeah, so on the back of that, I was teaching this last term, and when I set the students on a task to basically conduct a life cycle assessment on paper versus plastic, the standard one that you probably would, I think they couldn't believe that paper scored so lowly. So plastic scored so highly compared to paper because of the transport costs. Somebody in your group, I think, said there are a lot of oil refineries in this country, or there are more than there are of paper processing plants and trees. So the trees that have to be cut down in a different country, let's say in the South American continent, and then processed into paper, that's very energy intensive, and then shipped over to this country. In terms of energy and in terms of carbon emissions, extracting some oil and then getting it shipped to this country, or even it's in a nearby oil field or some form of oil refinery which can then process it in this country, it actually reduces the delivery and the distribution part of the carbon footprint. So plastic actually is less bad than you think compared to paper, especially that plastic has a much longer lifespan, and paper, as soon as you've walking home in the middle of winter with your Primark bag and your Primark clothes end up all over the floor, you could then get them to think about other materials such as hemp bags, other fibrous bags, cotton bags, instead of just paper and plastic. Cool, good stuff. So we've just talked about, I don't need to write that down, but some things that I was thinking about. The prior knowledge that they really do have to have is what is being pumped into the atmosphere as a result of any one of those steps. The environment in general. So I know the atmosphere is the environment, but perhaps the local area, anything not in terms of gases, that's what I mean by environmental pollution. The processes in terms of the extraction of those raw materials, how energy intensive it is, and then the process of actually manufacturing those materials. So in terms of plastics, they will have to learn about the extraction processes. Metals, they do learn about the extraction of metals. So they will have this knowledge. And I believe that they should learn about these life cycle assessments to apply this knowledge, rather than here's how crude oil is extracted, here's how metals are extracted. Now in 6 months' time, at the end of year 11, we're going to do a bit of life cycle assessments. Why not do it ongoing in terms of comparing paper or plastic or metal or whatever, in terms of the bottles that they use? Why not do that whilst you are teaching those specific topics? Because they have to learn it anyway, and they have to have that knowledge in order to carry out a life cycle assessment. So my question here is, why are they more important than you think? I personally think that we can evaluate our own impact. The whole purpose of this conference is for thinking about sustainability and thinking more sustainably about our teaching as well. But I think not just products, not just manufacturing processes. I like that one of the groups talked about digital copies of a game. That has a carbon footprint, so that should be considered in a life cycle assessment. So I think we can evaluate our own impact on the environment based on the lessons that we teach. I think there is a balance that we need to find between delivering high quality chemistry, using the chemicals that we have available to us, using the resources available to us, but also being environmentally friendly. So the question I'm going to pose to you right now is, we're not going to have 10 minutes. I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. I just want you to think about a life cycle assessment. Just think about some stages. So the resources involved, whether it be practical work, whether it be paper, whether it be an online video that you are showing your students based on that particular part of the topic. But for acids and alkalis, I want you to think about a way that you could teach it, but consider all of the resources and the environmental impact of that lesson. Break it down into 3 different parts and then score each of those parts in terms of resources, printing costs, etc. 3 or 4 different parts if you're struggling to get started. But then compare that to an alternative way that you would teach the lesson. So would you do a practical, or would you do a demonstration, or would you show a video, or would you use more of paper resources? I want you to compare 2 ways of teaching the same lesson and give it a score in terms of how environmentally friendly it is. The lower the score, the more environmentally friendly it is, as with life cycle assessments. And then we'll try and share some. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I'm just going to go till 7 minutes past 2. I'm going to turn my camera off so I'm not just staring at you. And I just want you to have a think. Does that make sense for everybody? Thumbs up if it does.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we'll just finish up and then we'll get started again in just 30 seconds or so. Okie doke. So, anybody willing to describe to the rest of the workshop a lesson, an overview of a lesson on teaching acids and alkalis, comparing that with an alternative way to teach the same lesson, and comparing their environmental impacts? I'm not going to pick on people. I think that would be unfair, but I would like volunteers.
I'll give it a go, Mark. Why not?
Fantastic.
Well, you could just do a standard, maybe a titration or something, just so that you get the idea of it. But for a typical lesson, it'd just be a lot of practical work. There's a lot of hazardous chemicals. All the kids would have to come in. All the staff would have to come in. And, you know, transport-wise, that's not good. Photocopies-wise, that's not particularly great. My alternative was maybe to teach from home and use simulations online instead, because there's some really Royal Society of Chemistry came in, didn't they, yesterday, and they had some good simulations and stuff that I thought might be quite helpful. And then if you really wanted to do something practical, I'm not sure how logistically you get this to them, but maybe even give them some litmus paper and they've got to go around and test different objects from around the home, like the water and bleach and lemons and things like that, and say what they think or how acidic or alkaline they think those objects are. But yeah, my scores were, for a typical one, considering all the transport and everything, getting everybody in and all the chemicals, like a 3 out of 10. But then taught it from home, I've given it about a 7 out of 10. I think the problem is, and it's good because it raises more questions about, for example, are you compromising on the quality of the lesson for trying to make it more environmentally friendly?
That's the big question that I just want us to think about, really. That's and just to become more aware. I'm not saying I'm an environmentally friendly chemistry teacher all the time. I will avoid printing out certain materials if I don't need to. But yeah, exactly that, Daniel. I really like that point, is that, are you compromising on decent practical based lessons when they do require a lot of chemicals for actual in-depth chemistry teaching? I really like that you added that. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll give it a go as well.
Oh, thank you.
So, right. So I was thinking more along the lines of doing the classic kind of indicator practical that you might do with quite young kids. We give them a whole load of different substances and get them to work out whether they're acid or alkaline, put them on a scale. And like classically, you'd have like small groups and they'd all do all the substances together. And I thought really that's probably not the best way to do it, because you're wasting a lot of stuff that might have better uses elsewhere. And just also producing like a lot of glassware that needs to get washed up, which is also not great for the environment. And because you're doing quite a time-consuming practical with them all having to do quite a few substances, the likelihood is, as a teacher, you'd print out the information sheet for them to stick in, rather than getting it to write them in their book that already has paper in, rather than just sticking paper on paper. So what I thought I'd do instead is maybe have small groups, but they only test a couple of the different substances each. So they're still getting the practical experience, but rather than doing the full range, maybe they just do a couple and then they bring it together as a class to say what they thought they were and put it on the scale together. So then you're cutting down on the wastage as well as the glassware. And then because it shouldn't take as much time, then they'll also be able to write the information in their books rather than having to print off the sheets maybe.
I really like that. And Daniel agrees. He's just said groups is a good, simple idea. And that actually is a way to strike the balance between them still doing the practical, but not having to do all of it. So you're not having to have so much printing and so much resources and chemicals. It would be interesting if you were to sit down and actually, if you had longer, or if in school it was, not time consuming to do it, but I think it's important to think about it, is actually to score your lessons. If an alternative can be done where the science and the teaching and learning isn't compromised, would it be worth actually really delving deep into, is it better to print off? Is it better to just get them to do the practical? Is it better to get them to watch the video? Is it better to do a demo? And actually really thinking about the environmental impacts of all of those different stages of your lesson. Because as with a paper bag or a plastic bag, it might surprise you that doing a practical might be more environmentally friendly compared to a cut and stick activity, or using laptops, for example, where they do animations. It might well be, if you really considered all of the build up to that particular resource, all of its life cycle, is it more environmentally friendly to do what we think is more environmentally friendly? And that's kind of what I want us to think about, really, is to have that idea that we do need to be sustainable in terms of teaching. We do need to teach sustainability. And there's the balance we need to strike between good, high quality teaching and learning and being sustainable. But we do also have to teach the students how to be sustainable. So I'm going to skip past this bit just because we've got a couple of minutes, but my thoughts on why schools may just teach 1 or 2 lessons on life cycle assessments instead of actually embedding it throughout the course. Some schools do embed it throughout the course. Some schools have really got to grips over the last couple of years with the curriculum, but life cycle assessments themselves, they are subjective, so therefore it's up for debate. Could it be that they don't have the time to really do it, and really, as with other topic areas, don't have time to apply something else with that subject knowledge, and they just see it as I'm going to teach this at the end so I know it's been taught? Is it because it's an extremely small part of the curriculum? It really is. It's only mentioned a little bit on the curriculum, and like I said, in most textbooks it's 1 or 2 pages, and it's not talked about again in any other areas of the curriculum where it could potentially be talked about and discussed. It really does also feature in such a small capacity on past paper questions that you can find, and very small number of marks in exams since it's been introduced. It might just be a quick what is a life cycle assessment, or conduct a life cycle assessment, and that's it. Could it also be teacher confidence in the topic? Are we not confident enough to allow the students to really delve deeply into thinking about this and being evaluative, being argumentative with all of these different materials that we teach them about? So just to end on, moving forward to what I'd like you to do, obviously some form of action out of a workshop. I do want you to think about being sustainable when you're teaching, but I don't want you to compromise the teaching and learning, obviously, of the students and of your lessons. But I would like you to try and think in your lessons, is there a topic that you could embed, or you will embed, a life cycle assessment into the next few months? Could you, when you start your teaching jobs next year, could you actually conduct a life cycle assessment early on in the GCSE curriculum and then apply it as you go through all the other topics? I just want you to think about one particular topic that you would try to embed life cycle assessments into the next few months of your teaching, perhaps. And the idea is that it's a continuous approach to evaluating the environmental impacts of the products that the students are learning about, with a part of the curriculum that is there already. So why would we not include it? Because they have to know about it anyway. Not only do they have to know about it, it will make them more conscious moving forwards. It might make us more conscious through teaching it. And I hope it's been insightful. I hope it's been thought-provoking. That was the purpose of this. Yes, we've sort of touched on what a life cycle assessment is, but we've also opened our minds into thinking about sustainable teaching a little bit more, with an actual area of the curriculum that the students actually have to do. So thank you very much.